Today's guest, David Compaan, is the Quality Engineering Manager for IGS Solar, a division of IGS Energy. Collectively, IGS Energy has developed or financed over 200 megawatts of C&I solar projects and over 40,000 residential solar projects. David also held the NABCEP PV Installation Professional Certification since 2010 and the NABCEP PV System Inspector Certification since 2017. Along with his duties at IGS, David also serves as an independent PV system inspector for multiple jurisdictions throughout Ohio and has performed over 3,000 PV inspections to date. Stay tuned for my interview and conversation with David Compaan. Hey everybody, welcome to What's Up? Solar Podcast with Emmitt Muckles. And today I have an old friend. He's not that old though. He's really not. But I've known him for a while, and he became my how do I say this? You're my code man crush for a while.
Makes me feel special.
David Compaan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. When we first, I don't even remember what year it was. What was that, like 2014, 2013 we met?
Yeah, I was gonna guess 2012 or 2013 would be my guess. I was doing some contract training work for what was then Sunwise.
Oh,
And I think we had gone out to, I think you might have been there for Fronius, but they did
yeah.
some dealer training sessions and they'd
Yep.
bring out vendors and I would do some trainings for them out there. Did some code trainings at a couple of their spots. So I think that might have been the first time we might have crossed paths at some trade shows and stuff, but that was the first time that I remember us kind of sitting down and chatting and hanging out.
I remember because you were going over code, and I was like, how does this young man know so much about code? I mean, you were just rattling it off like it was second nature, like it was a second language, like it was a first language, and English was a second language. And I said to myself, self, I got to get to know this guy. And so I was
Well,
like, hey,
yeah, like for me, it was one of those things where, at that time, I was still new to solar. I
yeah,
might have been in it for a few years, but in my mind, I hadn't been in there long enough to consider myself. I still don't consider myself an expert by any means, but definitely not back then. So the way to get around that for me was to learn the code. Everything in the code is black and white. So it's not like I can go up to somebody and say, yeah, my experience in the 50 years I've been doing solar, like this is how
yeah.
it's done. Like I could go, well, the code tells you to do this. So do this. It's not based on my experience level that at the time when I first started getting into it was still pretty short. Like, so then you have people that might question, like, oh, well, he hasn't been in solar that long. It's like, I'm not trying to say that I'm the expert. I'm just trying to say the code tells you to do this, so you do it.
But the funny thing about that, solar is such an evolving, emerging technology that if you're in it for 6 months, I mean, really like doing some applying yourself to some kind of discipline within solar, you become an old hack real
Oh yeah,
fast.
absolutely. The analogy that when I got into solar, my buddy James Cormican, he's the one who trained me up and he taught me tons of stuff. Forever grateful for him. But
Mm,
one of the things that he said is like the solar industry, like you said, it evolves and changes so quickly that solar years are kind of like dog years. 1 year working in solar is like 7 years being a banker or some other industry that doesn't change that often. And it's like you think about it, you're like, that's kind of true. Like
it is.
our code's constantly changing, equipment's constantly changing, all that stuff. So that's the analogy I use a lot when I bring, do trainings with new people that come on board that I work with. It's like, look, it moves quickly. Solar years are like dog years. So if you've been working in solar for 3 years, that's kind of a long time. Like that might be 15, 20 years of being a bank teller or an accountant or something like that.
So looking at it that way, you're like, I really want to understand this industry, and there's so vast of a knowledge base that is within the people who are currently in the business for
Yep.
me to actually feel good about myself and be able to have a conversation with these people, I'm going to get to know the code. And here's what I want to go with this question. You set out to learn something and it takes you somewhere else. Did that take you somewhere else?
Yeah, it got me deeper into the other kind of not unknown, but just not well-known area of solar in terms of the standards.
Yeah,
You generally think of codes and standards, people a lot of times think of interchangeably, but they're at least talked about together. People talk about codes and standards.
yeah,
Most, if you're in solar, you probably know the electrical code to some extent.
yeah,
What you don't know is how does UL standard 2703 or 61730 come about or work or get up? Like, there's that whole other half of codes and standards that is less known than, people familiar with electrical or building codes. They don't know the standard side that well. Now, if you came from an equipment side, like your experience at Fronius, you know the inverter standards and how they
yeah,
work and how they get updated. But most installers don't know that. They might know that there is a standard, but they don't know how does that work? How does that get changed? How often does it get changed?
yeah.
Like how does a new one get created? So as I got deeper into the code section of electrical code and building codes and things like that, that then kind of opened this other door of like, oh, there's this whole other half of equipment standards that, oh, I better figure this stuff out too and get involved and figure out how to work with that side of the equation as well.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I came across at my time with the manufacturer, because you got UL, you got CSA,
Yep.
and and these play a role in the equipment being acceptable in the industry. And I want to call America the biggest AHJ.
Hmm.
But then within the biggest AHJ, you have these micro AHJs that sometimes can pick and choose what they want. And to be able to navigate that, you need someone who knows how this applies to things. For instance, I always make this joke about I live in Indiana. Indiana, we're still on NEC 2008.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, I can just take some solar panels, make like a credit card house of cards with them, connect them together and connect them to an inverter, and everybody go, okay, that's fine. Versus if I cross the border to Illinois, it's a whole different ballgame. And
Oh
if I
yeah.
and it's not just if I cross the border, because once you get into Cook County in Illinois, they have their own code book.
Yep. Yep.
So, for me, knowing someone like you who has a vastly more intimate knowledge of the code and of UL standards is worth its weight in gold to me. And I've told you this. I praise you every time I see you. I'm like, oh, great one. But I appreciate you for that fact. But what are you doing now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, a few things. So, essentially, I'll call it a day job. Most days during the day, I'm working for a company called IGS Energy.
Mm,
We're an energy retailer based in the Midwest, really diversified across energy markets. Originally started out as a natural gas and then electricity provider in the deregulated energy markets, but
yeah,
we're still family owned, and our family, the board members, really kind of see what's happening with climate change and sustainability and things like that, and have made a very conscious effort to pivot, or maybe not pivot, but incorporate more sustainability and more sustainable energy applications. So we have, obviously a solar group that I'm part of, both on
yeah,
commercial, C&I. We have residential solar. We have an in-house solar installation company that we acquired a few years back. We also do some community solar work in terms of subscribers, actually doing stuff out in Illinois where we're doing some subscription activities for those community solar projects. We have a biogas division that's doing biogas projects, LED lighting, looking at energy storage stuff. So we're really trying to incorporate a lot more of these newer sustainability, focused energy, pathways for a lot of the customer base. So that's what I'm doing during the day. Go
Are you
ahead.
in Ohio though, correct?
I'm Ohio, so IGS Energy is based here outside of Columbus, Ohio. So
Okay,
I work out of their headquarters a few days a week. They're good, allowing us to do remote,
that's nice.
as needed. So I bounce around between our headquarter office as well as, well, like I said, we have a small installation company that I usually one day a week I'll go down there and work with those guys as well. So that's kind of the day job. I serve as the quality engineering manager. So looking at products going on the approved vendor list, going out to job sites, inspecting like I think next week I'm heading out to look at a Golden Row. We have a 5 megawatt ground mount that they're doing and just started installation. So I'm going to go out there and just make sure we're good with the
Oh, I have a question for you
EPC and
now.
yeah. Okay.
So, this is a good one because this is right up my alley.
Yep.
When it comes to inspecting uh, larger than 250K, because I have a talk about this next week,
Okay.
what are you seeing that could be improved? What are the common mistakes?
Whether it is, I see this mistake across all spectrum, not just above 250, KW. Like if I was going to narrow it down to one thing or one common thing, it's going to be, you know, not torquing fasteners and electrical terminals. You could back that up a step and just, say not following the installation manual.
Yeah,
People, especially as they get really familiar with installing equipment, whether that's a specific brand of inverter or racking or modules, they just go like they think they know how, which may or may not be correct. But ultimately, we need them to follow the installation manual. And if the installation manual, the racking system says torque those module clamps to 10 foot-pounds, you need to be torquing them to 10 foot-pounds. If,
now, I want to ask you, since you said torquing,
yep,
you're in the Midwest. You're in this
yep,
area where we have drastic temperature changes.
correct.
It can be 50 below in some
Yep,
spots. It can be 108, not counting humidity.
yep,
And that has a big play on torque, over the
absolutely.
season.
Yep.
Do you think that comes into play in some of these instances? Or is it just you're looking at it and you're just seeing that there's a commonality where people are just not paying attention, especially like if they're new?
Yeah, I think there's a commonality. I don't necessarily think, geographic location plays that much into it. I think there's a couple industry issues at hand. Um, One being in a good way, the rapid growth of the industry, which
Yeah.
means that there's a lot of newer, field people coming on board that may or may not have good training from that EPC or from, other organizations that do training.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem is that these new employees get thrown on job sites right away. And yeah, anyone can largely use an impact gun or a torque wrench, like
Yeah.
whether they're trained to do it or not, I don't know. But I think that's a lot of what the issue is because of the rapid growth. You get people, most of the field crews out there on especially large field mounted, ground mounted jobs, like they haven't been installers for 10 years, right? They might have been installers for 10 days.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is because of the growth, these companies are expanding pretty quickly. We'll disregard all political talks for the time being of what could happen in the future. But
Yeah.
looking back, the growth of these companies has been really strong. So these companies are expanding. So there's a lot of roles opening up. So the really qualified solar installers that might have a NABCEP certification and these other things quickly move on to becoming like design manager and
Yeah.
sitting behind a desk and looking at and doing a great job looking at designs and plans and engineering, but they get moved up and promoted in the company as those companies expand and they get pulled away from field work a lot of times. And the
That's
people
in any
moving in,
industry,
yeah,
typically too.
exactly. So it's not necessarily, it's just something to be aware of in the industry and work, hopefully these companies as they grow work to build out really strong training programs. So these installers that come on that might be new or have very minimal experience, at least will go through maybe a 2 week or a 3 week training program with their company prior to going on site instead of day one being like, show up on the job site with your steel toed boots and we're going to put you to work.
Hmm. That's
So that,
interesting. You know, that's one of the things, that's why I recently ventured into my own because I saw that need.
yeah, absolutely.
I saw that there's a need for training because a long, long time ago, when you came into a company, they didn't even think, and I don't care what it is, whether it was McDonald's up to Ford Motor Company, there was a period where from either 3 days to 3 weeks or so, all you did was train on what you were going to
Yeah,
be doing.
absolutely.
And I don't see that happening anymore. Even if you look at the employment, uh, if you look at the job postings, they're looking for ready-made people. And
Yep.
it's no different in the solar industry where people are not, or companies don't seem as willing to invest up front because our turnaround is so quick. Like most people only stay at a job like 2, 3 years,
Right.
then they move on. Well, this is really not sustainable. And I'm just putting it out there. We have to get back to this point where we invest in our people and our people invest in where they're going to be. So, hey, I'm going to give you this training and I'm going to ask you for a commitment of this amount of time so we can develop each other. That's
Yeah.
just my personal philosophy on things.
Yeah,
But
I agree because I think one of the other things too is these companies, I can't say for sure, but it seems like there's a little bit of reluctance to provide a lot of training because there's the fear like if we spend a month training this person and he works for us for a month, he might just go find another job that's going to pay him 25 cents more an hour for a different installer down the street. And we've already invested all that time. So I love your idea of putting it in there of like, it's kind of a trade-off both ways. Like if we're going to invest the time to train you, we expect you to invest the time to at least stick with us for a period of time because I think there is that fear. Like there's companies always looking for solar installers. And if you have experience and someone else doesn't, yeah, you have a really good chance of getting that job, and they
yeah,
might pay you 25 cents more than where you're getting paid at by the company that just trained you, which is a bummer for
yeah.
the people that investing in training.
And solar installation is and I'm going to say it this way, it's a young body's
Yep.
position.
Yep.
You can, I mean, you can, if you are really diligent about your physical fitness, uh, do it at 40.
Right.
It's usually 19 to maybe 28, 29.
Yep.
About that time, your body's like, you need to go into the office or do something. It's not probably as bad on commercial sites as it is on residential, because residential, you got to climb up a ladder with stuff. You're
Right.
working on pitches, your ankles, your knees are always under stress. I understand this. But I see that turnover, and this is why I'm such a proponent of the trades, because I tell younger people or people thinking about getting into it, they go, I want to get into solar. And I say, what do you want to do? They're like, I don't know what. I'm like, there's permitting, there's design, there's inspection. You could be a drone operator. You could be an installer. You could be someone who just works in the warehouse because you know the components. They need people like you.
Yeah.
And people
And
are
and I
like,
think and that's a great point too. The way that this industry has become specialized within those little segments. Like I think you predate me in the solar industry, but when I got into solar in like 2008, like solar companies were, maybe 4 or 5 guys that worked at a solar company and they all did everything.
yeah,
They have the ability to do the designs, install, commission, all that stuff. And as this industry has grown, and kudos to NABCEP and the way that they've kind of taken this under their belt to look at those specialized certifications where you can now have just installation certification for people that are just doing installation and the design. And like you said, there's so many different areas now within the industry. Like it's different than when we got involved in if you're a solar installer, you pretty much had to know how to do everything.
Yeah.
But now you can come in and you can just do one specialized area. So
Yeah,
yeah,
there's opportunities that are available too because back 2008, 2009, 2010, I'll say up to 2018, it was an inverter, modules, racking.
yep,
That was the components of it. Now it's inverters, microinverters, hybrid inverters, off-grid DIY inverters that people are doing themselves.
yep,
There are batteries which are AC coupled and or DC coupled, or a combination of both, depending on what you have. You have EV charging controlling, you have home controls, smart controls.
yep.
This thing has expanded so much that there are niches within the market that people could get into. And going back to the code, there's code for all of it.
Yeah, exactly. The one of the things, I'm out here in Ohio, so I didn't get to the other half of my job duties, but I also serve as I think you know this, a solar inspector for a few jurisdictions around central Ohio. And out here, our electricity rates are low. We don't have time of use metering. There might be one or two utilities offer it as some weird rate, but for the most part, don't have time of use metering. So there isn't a lot of energy storage going in. We have a fairly stable grid. We don't have rolling blackouts like we saw
No.
in California a few years back. But like, yeah, as you know, in Indiana, it's a stable grid. Cost of electricity is really low. We don't have a lot of energy storage going in. So one of the things as you're to your point, it all comes back to the code that I'm still in the process of really kind of trying to ramp up my familiarity with is power control systems.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
of the newer things that have come into the grid that will allow you to what on paper looks like an oversized system, but if you put in the control system and program it correctly, will allow you to connect to the grid in a code compliant fashion. Like that's all fairly new in the last couple of code cycles. And
Yeah.
now the equipment manufacturers are coming out with all the programming and how to do it. And that's something for me that I'm constantly trying to learn up on all these new areas of the code that are coming into play, especially PCS and things like that. Are going to become a much bigger portion of what's seen out there. Even without battery systems now, you can have a power control system that
Yeah.
will allow you to interconnect in a way that wouldn't have been allowed, 6 years ago.
Yeah, because I I think I really start taking hold of it when I was taking one of Enphase's courses and they offered a PCS course. And I was like, I need to hop on that
Yeah,
because the way I understand things from a very utilitarian kind of way, putting my hands on it or understanding how the technology works. Then I can work outward from that
yep,
to be able to explain. But if you just sit down and try to tell me about something with no pictures or something like that, I'm lost. But you're right. Span panel, lumen,
yeah,
in phase, all of these have PCS control in some form or fashion. And with the new housing that are kind of happening, because there's a housing kind of boom where I am, because it's a small town and it's very affordable. So they're building all these new houses. And here's one of the things that I always say. Where I live, I see more Teslas per capita than I do in San Francisco. I
yeah,
keep saying that on the podcast. And I think solar and storage would be a great option for these people, even though we only have like 13 cents a kilowatt hour that we're
yeah,
paying.
right.
But they don't realize that if you want to charge your Tesla, instead of taking it down to the coal store where they have a charger and
Yeah,
riding your bike back home, you can charge it at home and use the sun, which never sends a bill.
yep,
Um, but I'm trying to convince the world. I'm on my own soapbox, and I actually have a talk next week with the local system to let people know there's things out here for you. All right, where what would you like to do that you haven't done in the renewable space?
That's tough because I've been fortunate and I've really been able to do largely what I've wanted to do. But one of the things that I always tell myself that I'd love to do if I ever have the opportunity. It's in renewables, not necessarily in solar, but man, I would love to go up on one of those big wind turbines.
Nope, I'm good. Nope, I'm good. You know, I fly drones.
Yeah,
When I was flying my drone the other day, and I was doing a lake survey for a friend because they wanted to find out why this lake was turning so green.
yeah.
And what they ascertained after I did this drone flyover is that there's runoff, there's possible chemical runoff from a cemetery through a standing lake that doesn't have much drainage that goes into a secondary small lake that drains into their lake.
Okay.
But when that thing was at about 290 feet, and I'm looking at the screen, I'm like, man, that's pretty high. My knees are getting a little willy.
As you're standing on the ground with
As
your,
I'm standing
yeah,
on the ground, I've done solar installations. I've never been comfortable being over 6 feet off the ground. I'm just not
really?
com
Okay.
yeah, if you once you start doing something and you focus in on that and my safety harness is on so perfectly. Like there is no way I might slip, but I'm not falling. That's
Yeah,
for sure. I am a
yeah.
safety freak. Anyway, so I think Ohio doesn't have many, or do they do it in Southern Ohio?
In terms of wind
Yeah.
farms, we have some actually right on the Indiana border. Like in Northwest Ohio, there's a few fairly large wind farms out there.
Yeah, because I know there's quite a few in South Central Indiana. That sounds weird.
Yeah.
South Central Indiana. South Central Indiana and in Southern Illinois because I see
Yeah.
them every time I travel. But I just look at those things and I see the blades going down the road.
Does it freak you out when you drive through at night and you see all of the lights blinking
No, that doesn't.
synchronized?
That doesn't. But I'll tell you what my introduction to windmills were. Years and years and years ago, I used to work at a repair house.
Okay.
And the repair house was such that something was broken and they set something on your desk and said it's broken. You might not know what it was, you
Yeah.
might not know what it ran, but electronics has these basic principles. You voltage in, voltage out, or voltage in, typically 5 tail out, 5 plus and minus 12, 24. You check for those things. Anyway, I get this big giant gear that has IGBTs built into it.
Oh wow. Okay.
And it was like, what is it? They're like, it comes from a windmill. I was like, what do I do? They're like, I'm like, these things are burnt up. They're like, yeah, get your eyeglass out, find out what the IGBTs are, and replace them. I was like, what could blow an IGBT like this that has like two,
Yeah.
300 amps that it can take?
Yeah, that's crazy.
I was like, that was my outside of that, I drive by and say, those are pretty big.
Yeah,
Yep, keep
man,
it pushing.
I'd love to go up in one. I think it'd be amazing to go up there and just check it out.
Yeah, but they're basically just running a big generator
Yeah. Yep.
that's high, like 200 to 400 feet up in the air. I was just like, I'm in awe of that. Because actually, before I got into solar, I was thinking about wind
Okay.
because there was a company in Canton, Michigan that I looked up and they said that they did windmills. And I actually applied to them, never heard anything back, but solar picked me up.
Yeah. We're glad you made it in the solar.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Are you visiting any shows or are you guys representing anywhere?
So we had a booth at RE Plus last year in Anaheim. I believe we're going to do one again under IGS Solar. So I think we'll have another one out there as well at RE Plus. In terms of other trade shows, I generally hit 4 trade shows a year.
Yeah.
Is kind of what I go for. So the big RE Plus show now in Vegas for the next few years, I'll hit. Um, I It's becoming my favorite, as you're probably aware, and many other people say, is the NABCEP Continuing Education Conference.
Yeah.
That show is phenomenal from just an education and learning standpoint.
Yep.
It's my favorite, easily one of my favorites, and it's likely my favorite trade show. The other shows that I'll hit are going to be, I'm trying to remember what my fourth one was, but I just came back a couple weeks ago from the Intersolar Munich show.
Yeah.
So go out to the
Oh,
big Germany show because that's the largest in the world. But what we typically see is that the products and the trends will hit European and Asian markets a year or two before they make it in the US.
really? So batteries were big there before they became big
Yep.
here?
Batteries
Huh.
are were big there and they're actually still bigger there than they are here in the US. You
Wow.
walk through the show and there's hundreds of battery manufacturers offering all sorts of stuff.
It's
They're
probably because they don't have the regular, some of the, how do I say this? They don't have some of the restrictions because believe it or not, and I'm just going to say it like this, we kind of make it hard due to regulations to install solar here.
Yeah, either direct regulations in terms of the codes or indirect regulations in terms of the way that our energy grid is structured.
Mm,
So, um, our energy grid in the US is comprised of, regional transmission
yeah.
operators. So you and myself are in PJM, that's like, Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland, all the way over to Chicagoland.
Yeah, because we experienced an outage back in like 2003 that hit the entire area from
Yep.
Chicago to New York. That makes sense.
So, the PJM market is different from MISO and ERCOT, the Texas market and Northeast. Like there are all these little regional players that control what goes on, but also control some of the other things. Like there's been a lot of talk in the last, 5, 10 years about VPP, virtual power plants, right? Those have been going on in Europe for a while.
Oh, really?
So the European market, much of the market, if not all, I'm not super familiar with the entirety of the European market, but they have like dynamic real-time energy pricing.
Yeah.
So where, as you talked about in your neck of the woods, you said 13 cents a kilowatt hour. That's a flat rate
Yeah.
that as a residential owner, you're getting billed at, regardless of if you're using power at noon or at midnight or at 2 a.m. or at 6 p.m. It's always the same rate. Same for me out in Ohio. And for the majority of the US, it's like that. But in Europe, they have dynamic real-time pricing. So their energy storage systems over there can actually respond to those dynamic pricing signals.
Oh,
So you can set up your energy storage system to say, okay, if the price of electricity goes over whatever, 20 cents a kilowatt hour or the European equivalent in euros, whatever it is, to start pulling from the batteries. If it drops below a certain, cost, then you can recharge the batteries.
oh,
So there's a lot more active, dynamic charge and discharge based on what the grid is asking for and charging you. Whereas here in the US, all these grid operators are just like, oh, here's your 13 cents a kilowatt hour.
that adds some complexity to it as well. Because here, if you have a battery, basically, you could do time of use, which is
Right.
kind of what you're talking about. But then we have the other modalities. So if your consumption is greater than your PV, kick the battery on. And
Right.
that's what the other popular standard is
Yep.
across households. And because I battled that, I don't know if you were at the NABCEP when I was on a CT tear.
No,
I was just
I don't think so,
I was
but
like, CTs, tell me about your CTs. How? What? I was hitting everybody up. People were running from me because, it's one of those things that runs our storage market is how CTs are placed.
yep.
And some of our households are antiquated. The main panels haven't been upgraded, and people are slapping CTs. They have weird routing.
Yep.
Uh, and if you put the CT in the wrong place, your payback is different.
Yep.
Your how it activates, how the battery kicks in is different. How it charges. All of these things come into play. So out for like a good year, I was a CT nut
Yeah.
because I was diagnosing remotely so many problems that were allocated to CT placement, whether they were upside down, improperly phased, cross phased,
Yeah.
or the reference was wrong. They were installed right, but the references, there are so many things with two CTs that you get wrong. It's almost exponential.
Yeah.
But I almost went on a rant. I'm not going to do it. I'm not. I
And
am.
like I agree with you 100%. Like here at IGS on our residential team, we financed, I think we have over 40,000 residential systems kind of under our umbrella now that we're doing the asset management for. And I don't know for certain, but I'd be willing to put a lot of money on it that our number one issue that we see is CT placement upside down. Like you said, they'll put line one, line two under the same CT and, cancellation, like all sorts of things that like it's by far the most common issue. And every one of those issues still requires a truck roll that you're going to get
Yeah.
billed whatever $400 for.
Yeah. And this is part of what I'm doing now in my capacity. So what I thought about all the things that I have at my disposal intellectually. And the last place that I worked at, I realized I was covering in troubleshooting upwards to 52 products.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, like old Keikos,
Oh yeah.
SMAs, might hit a SATCON, and I had to look at this chart and say, oh, that needs this. And once that realization hit me, it's like, why am I stuck doing one thing when I can help so many people on the training side, but also on the troubleshooting side? Just,
Yeah.
you know, and you know me, I really love this and I love people. I'm like a kindergartner. And that's why I made friends with you because I love people who have a passion about what they do. And you have such a great passion about this industry and just your application of what you do related to the code. So thank you for that.
Oh, I appreciate it. Right back at you.
Yeah.
I appreciate your passion in what you bring to the industry. And I was so happy last year when I saw that you got nominated or placed or put on the NAPSEP board of directors. So I
Yeah.
was super
Yeah.
excited about that. So
Thank you.
congratulations a year late or so, but I was very happy to see that.
Yeah. I want to thank Sean for that, Mr. O'Brien. Thank
Yep.
you. Yes, I'm on the NAPSEP board. And I'm gonna tell you something that's weird. So I was trying to find my knapsack stuff, sort whatever, because years ago I used to write a lot of content when I was with Fronius for knapsack, and then I realized I am not the I was not the best administrator of stuff, so it's lost.
Yeah.
So I'm going back through it from scratch just to get my PVIP and start it over, but underneath my company. So that way it's locked in and I know where it is. Because I was just like, how in the world? But hey, that's what it is. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for being on the WhatsApp Solar podcast. Are
Yeah,
you
my
coming to
pleasure.
Chicago next? To
I
the
I will not be. We will have some of our CNI sales guys will be out there walking the show, I believe, but I will not be heading out there.
Well, tell them
Yeah, I'll tell them
find
to hunt you
Emmitt.
down. And you have a session going on, right?
I have several.
Okay.
Well, I have a lot going on.
Yeah.
I have a lot going on. But tell
Okay.
them to find me because we may have to have a conversation. All right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Fantastic.
All right, everybody, this is how we end. You can go to YouTube, you can see the video, you can find the podcast on your favorite podcast aggregator. And that means iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, wherever podcasts are, WhatsApp is there. Make sure you download or subscribe or download and subscribe. You can listen in your car, you can listen while you're doing Pilates and yoga like I do. Listen to myself. It's called meditation. Just have fun with it. And remember, when you want to find out about little things, whether you are a advocate for solar, you're in the industry, you're an installer, come here. Leave a comment. Let me know what you're thinking because there may be something you want to find out, and I'll search that person down and we will interview them. Woo! Like Ric Flair. Anywho, remember, the sun never sends a bill. So stay up, stay in tune, and remember, you will always know what's up. Done.
Thank you, sir.